Well, hi there and welcome along to Jump to It here on irishracing.com. This is the Monday review show and lots to review, I think it's fair to say. Obviously, the Curragh took centre stage with the Irish 2000 and 1000 Guineas, throwing up some brilliant performances, I think it's fair to say. There was lots of action elsewhere. Stephen Harris will be bringing in his eye catchers from some of the GB action over the weekend. And there was lots of top-class affair in France as well. Vincent Finnegan will be touching upon what we saw in Paris. Gentlemen, I'd like to bring you in, as I mentioned, Stephen Harris and Vincent Finnegan. It was a full-on weekend, wasn't it? Stephen, we'll kick off with you. Keeping tabs on all of it at the moment it is pretty hard, but naturally, we'll start with the Curragh and the Irish 2000 Guineas. Native Trail won what on paper beforehand looks, shall we say, slightly below par renewal. Nonetheless, he got the job done in pretty good fashion.
Yeah, he's not a flashy quickener, Ed, is he? He's a galloper, a grinder. He got a good ride to make use of that. He was always handy. It did cross my mind afterwards. He's the sort of horse, he'll go to Royal Ascot, and it's quite sharp round there, isn't it? I could just see him, you know, getting trapped in a pocket and not being able to extract himself if it turned into a sort of sprint up the straight. He's not an explosive public imagination type horse. He got it done. He's a really tough, genuine, brilliant advert for Charlie Appleby. I suppose if you backed him, there was a brief moment it looked like they might swamp him, but he kept pulling out more. I don't think he was wildly impressive at a short price. And as you say, it didn't look a fantastic renewal beforehand.
Yeah, and Vincent, I'd like to bring you in here. We were talking about Native Trail. He is, of course... Of course, you followed Curragh. Now, listening to Charlie Appleby in the aftermath, it sounds like they may almost be forced to have round two in the St James's Palace Stakes, where betting generally goes 4 to 6 Curragh, 4 to 1 Native Trail. Do you think that's kind of priced up about right, or do you think Native Trail perhaps is, because he doesn't win with brilliance and because he's perhaps not as flashy as others, he may not quite get some of the recognition he deserves?
Well, I thought, like, you talk about his flashiness and his brilliance. He certainly looked brilliant last year in the Curragh when he came over here. He was awesome that day when he beat Point Lonsdale. Looked really good, looked a star, went on to do even better in later stages as a 2-year-old. This year he's come back, he won his first start. He gets beaten by a stablemate in the 2000 Guineas in Newmarket. Still a very, very good run. And then he comes to this Irish 2000 Guineas, where if you take him out, it was a listed race, realistically. The rest of them were very ordinary horses. A lot of them were beating each other in listed company only recently. So it wasn't really a Group 1. He starts at very prohibitive odds to win it. He wins, but he wins workmanlike more than anything else. There was a moment, as Stephen said, he looked like he might have got caught in early in the straight. He got out of that. He wins well. It's a decent enough performance in the sense, you know, he's fitting well, but we knew that from Newmarket anyway. I'm not quite sure where they go with Native Trail from here on. He doesn't look like he quite has the same spark he had at 2. He's still obviously a very high-class horse. Maybe he needs a break, maybe something like that, bring him back in the autumn. I don't know, but I would be fancying Curragh to be a much better horse going to Ascot, in my book anyway.
Okay, so you've answered the first part. What was going to be my next question? You think Curragh will uphold the form? Is there the possibility you think Native Trail could go 10 furlongs at some point? Because you say he doesn't seem to have that, at least on the evidence we've seen so far in his 3-year-old campaign, that kind of push-button acceleration isn't there?
Yeah, without a doubt. And even, look, taking everything into account, he wins the 2000 Guineas on Saturday in a time of 1:39.28. The fillies went out yesterday. Homeless Songs went out yesterday and ran about half a second quicker on slightly quicker ground. There's probably an equation in there to say that there wasn't a whole lot between the two races in times, which is pretty good for Native Trail considering that he was running against inferior opposition realistically. So going out and trip wouldn't be a problem. He certainly wasn't stopping at the end of the race on Saturday. I would think that before the end of the season we'll definitely see him over 1.25 miles. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder if something like the Eclipse could be perfect for him. But as you say, it sounds like they're going to have another bash with Curragh in St James's Palace Stakes. Of those in behind, Stephen, to bring you in, is there a beaten horse of those in behind? I mean, Vincent's kind of said it was a glorified listed event. Would there be anything further down the field you think is definitely one for the notebooks and you can mark up, shall we say?
Well, I thought Duke de Sessa ran one. It was a 50 to 1 chance, much bigger on the exchanges. He missed the break. and I thought he shaped quite nice. He didn't get beaten that far. He might do better over a longer trip, maybe a mile and a half in time. Dermot Well's not been in fantastic form, although things did improve on the Sunday for him in the 1,000 guineas. But I did think he was a bit of an eye catcher. But one thing we should say, it was quite refreshing from an English point of view, Ed, that we had Charlie Appleby winning the 2,000 guineas. William Haggis won the Tattersall's Gold Cup. It's quite unusual, a role reversal, that we're sending horses over there and stealing some prize money.
Oh, it feels good, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. But now, as you say, on the wider point, Charlie Appleby has mopped up now the English 2,000, the French 2,000, of course, with modern games, and now the Irish 2,000 as well. So, the boys in blue bandwagon continues to roll on. On the Sunday, of course, it was the Irish 1,000 guineas, and there was no doubt about the winner here. What a performance this was from Homeless Songs. Vincent, I was just sat on my sofa going, wow, at the manner in which this filly just tanked down the outside. It's almost as if she just joined the race, to use that old cliche, 3 furlongs out, push button acceleration. I mean, do we have a new superstar on our hands, or are we getting perhaps a little bit carried away?
No, I think we absolutely have a new superstar in our hands. I thought she was unbelievable. If you go back to her day in Leopardstown, the previous run, which was over 7, she had push button acceleration that day as well when she beat Agartha. Like, that was literally instant. Just press the button and away you go. It's like Formula One stuff here. And you saw the way she travelled through the 1,000 guineas. And when Chris Hayes, I'd say he had no idea what was going on about 2 furlongs out. He was just in absolute ecstasy, sitting there saying, oh my God, what am I sitting on here? And he pressed the button and boom, she's gone. She was absolutely brilliant. And to add to that is the fact, as Stephen alluded to a couple of minutes ago, Dermot Well's horses have been in dire form, like really, really poor form. The story around here in the Curragh area is they're all sick. If she's sick, it's hard to believe what she'd be like if she was well. Like, incredible performance. And like you go through the whole weekend, everywhere you look, and not just the weekend, but you go back over the last month, 6 weeks, he can't have a winner. He'd one odds-on winner, I think, in the last 40, 50 runners he's had. Crazy stuff. And yet he can come out and produce her. Now, Wells is a past master at this, as we know. Like, he's getting on in years now. He's 73, rising 74. He'd be 74 during the Galway Festival. But what a performance. It's his 5th win in this race. He's won 2 Melbourne Cups, an Epsom Derby, an Oaks at 2,000 guineas in the UK, numerous Irish Classics, a Belmont Stakes, a Triumph Hurdle, an Irish Grand National. Like, some CV, isn't it? And he just keeps producing them. And this is, it's a Moyglare homebred. They look to have an absolute star in their hands here. The one thing is that they've had little niggling problems with her along the way, so you wouldn't be sure she's going to take a lot of racing. But if she turns up in Royal Ascot, she wins. That's the bottom line, in my book anyway.
Yeah, I mean, a fantastic winner for Dermot Weld, who's now in his 5th decade with a trading licence. Unbelievable, really, it has to be said. You brought in a good point there, Vincent. Stephen, I'll bring you in on this one. They priced up the Coronation Stakes at Royal Ascot. 9-4 favourite she's been inserted as. 7-2 second favourite in Spiral, who, how should we call her, was the champion 2-year-old filly, if you like, due to reappear in the Coronation Stakes after having a small setback at the start of this season. And then you've got from Newmarket, Cachet, of course, who won the 1,000 guineas. Those 3 look as though they could lock horns at Royal Ascot in a few weeks' time now. I mean, that would be some race, wouldn't it? Vincent already said, swoop in, take the 9-4 about yesterday's winner. Would you be of the same viewpoint?
Well, I wouldn't pay anyone off. It seems quite a fair price. I mean, there's lots of doubts about Inspiral. It sort of leaked out, didn't it, that things hadn't gone to plan. She had a few setbacks. Nobody knew anything about it before that got mentioned. She was taken out of her intended engagement. She's reportedly going straight to Royal Ascot. Well, she's certainly not going to have maximum stable confidence behind it if she gets there at the moment. And Cachet, for me, I'd be slightly surprised if that one was good enough to be. And I think that one's had the run of the race from the front, and I doubt it's got quite the class of Dermot Weld's Homeless Songs. I thought the one to take from the race actually was Tuesday of Aidan O'Brien's, who I think is going to go for the Oaks now. Well, when I first watched the race, I thought she was disappointing, but in the last 100 yards, she stuck on again, and I think a longer trip will definitely suit her. I mean, Tuesday was sent off a very well-backed 11-4 favourite for the 1,000 guineas, and I'd have thought for sort of 80% of the race, backers would have been very confident, absolutely in the right position, well placed, handy on the rail, going better than the one in front of her. But she got absolutely murdered for pace by Homeless Songs. I mean, it was a pretty devastating performance. She's certainly not short of speed, which Ascot will be set up perfectly for her on fast ground, you'd imagine. I suppose the one concern would be, Vincent alluded to this, that they interviewed Weld afterwards, and he did say the horse has been struggling and all the rest of it, and she had had 2 or 3 quite major niggles that meant that she hadn't been able to get to the track yet, and she wasn't the easiest to train. So I suppose that would be in the back of your mind. But what you saw there is going to take a very smart filly to beat her, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you saw very different profiles of horses, didn't you? She looks the miler. Tuesday definitely looks like a filly who wants middle distances. My catcher from the race would be, I'm like a broken vinyl player, some cranky things in the 70s. My Oaks filly, Concert Hall, she finished 3rd in this, and she was staying on again at the end. Obviously, as I said, her dam won the Oaks a decade ago. Osiris Dabawi, there is a slight question mark about stamina there, but she was gaining yards again at the end over a mile, coming back from winning the Salsabil Stakes over 10 furlongs last time out. Convoluted way of saying, I just think she really needs to have a crack at a 1.5 miles now. It sounds like she's going there next. She's best priced 8-1 now, Concert Hall, to win at Epsom, where I think she will run her race. At the top of the show, Stephen alluded to the Tassels Gold Cup with Alenquer getting the job done. An absolute thrilling renewal, gets high definition, Vincent. This really was. It's got the commentators going. It got me going. It was an absolute cracker, wasn't it?
Oh, cracker, yeah. And what a ride Tom Marquand gave the winner. First ride ever in Ireland for Tom Marquand, and he goes and wins a Group 1. Smashing race. I thought high definition is the first thing. Couldn't believe the price of that. Ryan Moore had chose to ride that horse over Broome. Broome ends up an 11-1 chance. High definition 20-1. Nearly won. Had every chance all the way up the straight. And then the other one is State Arrest of Joseph O'Brien's. In similar fashion to the 1,000 Guineas, you stop the 1,000 Guineas with a couple of furlongs to run, and Homeless Song is absolutely cantering over the opposition. You stop that Tattersall's Gold Cup at the same point, and State Arrest is cantering all over them. Hit a bit of a flat spot, but was storming home at the finish. There's only a neck in it between the 3 of them at the line, a neck and a neck. And then you'd Lord North, who held every chance as well, and just got run out of it in the closing stages. He just had enough that hadn't got the fight for the other 3. But the winner was brilliant. Tom Marquand was exceptional riding it. I thought State Arrest is one you take out of the race. There's definitely going to be big pots for that all over the world again. One of these globe trotters. And then High Definition, they've obviously taught a lot of this horse at home. Rarely ever produced anything at that level on the track, but that was a really good performance too.
Yeah, absolutely. High Definition this time last year, wasn't he? I mean, was he short price of the Dante? He was all the rage, wasn't he? He just looked like he needed 3 miles and hurdles, but they've stuck with him, and it just appears perhaps he is going to kind of fulfil at least some of his early potential. I just thought Lord North, Stephen, and that was the horse perhaps. I know he's a bit of a globe trotter and he's more exposed than arguably the others. However, that was his first run since March and Maidan, and just wonder if perhaps he'll just strip a little bit fitter for that with other targets in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never mad on these horses coming back from Maidan unless they've had sort of 6 months to get over it. And actually, Alan Kerr had been to Maidan as well, hadn't he, on the same day as Lord North. Yeah. So that perhaps that's not the factor. I thought High Definition got a brilliant ride, and he bounced probably back to almost career best form, didn't he? Front running on that rail with more niggling away, eking out those sort of half lengths, and it looked like he'd won. I mean, Alan Kerr was extremely brave to get up and win that race. It was a proper race, wasn't it? And I agree with Vincent. I think the well-backed third State of Rest is the horse to take from it. He probably had the least optimum trip through the race and finished with running left in the tank again. He's going to win some big races this summer, I'm sure of that. I mean, just to touch on William Haggis, his strike rate at the moment, Ed, is absolutely incredible. It's sort of Charlie Appleby levels from the start of the season. Haggis has had 17 winners from his last 41 runners. He's going along at 41%. And they've all been well backed. I mean, the stable lads must be sort of drinking champagne in the morning, I should think. Everything is winning at every track all around the world at the moment. It's quite extraordinary. I think on the flat, even more than the jumps, because there's so much volume of it, stable form is the massive thing. We're going to come and touch on it later when we look at our eye catchers from the UK racing at the weekend. But it's a massive factor for punters. If you can latch onto these yards early. And often it's the case with its smaller stables in particular, suddenly have 2 or 3 winners when they've only had 10 runners. It is a massive, massive factor.
Yeah, you make some good points there. And I think that pretty much wraps up the Irish side of things from review. We'll now go on to the aforementioned English eye catchers, Stephen. You could continue the thread here because we did see some interesting action over the weekend. The Sandy Lane Stakes, Group 2, of course, was fast and furious. And Alcaballo continued this unbelievable winning thread in a race which looked pretty good beforehand. We had Go Bears Go in there as well, and Curragh and a few others. That's really shaken up the Commonwealth Cup market for Royal Ascot more than anything. I mean, was there anything you really take out of that race, and the rest of the GB action as a whole? Anything that's gone into the Stephen Harris notebook with either classics or Royal Ascot or any specific target in mind?
It was. I mean, I do think, Ed, it's important to say, you touched upon this earlier. These Saturdays, it's absolutely manic, isn't it? You need to calmly sit back and watch them all again. And the one advantage of the flat over the jumps is, instead of it taking you about 4 hours on a Sunday morning, you can actually watch every race in about an hour, and make your notes quickly if you haven't spotted stuff, because there's a race every 30 seconds. But El Caballo, I think that was a proper race. First of all, Carl Burke, he's 10 winners from 52 in the last fortnight, absolutely flying. The runner-up, Flaming Rib, is trained by Hugo Palmer, who's obviously taken over from the hapless Tom Dascombe this year. His horses are absolutely flying at the minute. Everything seems to be improving, sort of £7 for the new trainer, and that was run really well. But I actually think the horse to take from the race was the well-backed favourite, Go Bears Go, who was sent off 9-4, trained by David Loughnane. Fell over at the start quite badly and ran a remarkable race. I'm sure he's going to win a valuable race, listed, or maybe a Group 2, Group 3 at some point in the summer. So he's one of my eye catchers. A couple of others I've got. Majestic Dawn was an extremely impressive winner for Paul and Oliver Cole. Another yard who actually I've tended to be bang against Paul Cole for about the last decades. He's not got a very good strike rate and his horses are often overbet. But in the last few weeks, they are absolutely flying along. They've got some young horses. And Majestic Dawn, it's a race well worth watching back. I mean, it looked like the jockey had really overdone it. It was 10 lengths clear on the home turn at Goodwood, and normally they've sort of bolted down the hill and overdone things. But Majestic Dawn kept going, and it was a pretty remarkable performance. I think he's one to follow. It was a listed prize he won. He could maybe step up into a Group 3 or Group 2. Another one is Third Realm of Roger Varian. Now, Varian, regular listeners will know, has got a brilliant strike rate, places his horses really well, but his horses have been very, very flat. He's not been having winners. They've had a lot of horses disappoint. So they'll be delighted to see Third Realm win, and he clocked a really good time. That's form to follow. And the last one is a horse of Clive Cox's, Who Puts 50 in You, who's now 4 from 4 in a career. Only won a Haydock handicap off a mark of 83, but it was against a horse called Mighty Ulysses, who represented very strong form and was in the absolute optimum spot and quick and clear at the right time, whereas Who Put 50 in You had to come very wide and did extremely well to get up late. Probably go up £5 or so, be up to around 88, nudging 90 perhaps, but I think he's a handicapper who definitely can step up into group class in the coming weeks.
Oh, absolutely. Some wonderful horses for the notebook there. I jump to it, viewers, of course. Check out all Stephen's tips on bettingexpert.com. I'd very quickly throw one in, and that'd be Wowbank. I don't know if either of you two gentlemen saw the Knavesmire on Sunday at York for the televised meeting. Wowbank for David Loughnane. It won a minor event, absolutely scooter clear. This individual cost 525,000 guineas. In the hands of Sylvester Sousa, won 7.5 lengths. Sounds like they're going to roll the dice by going to Royal Ascot next time out. Something like the Norfolk Stakes, of which he's 12 to 1, could be the race for him. But as you say, make note of those horses Stephen has mentioned there. Put them in your tracker. There's definitely lots to unravel after the weekend. Right, we've touched upon Ireland. We've touched upon England. Now we're off to France. Vincent's off all over the place most of the time. He's deserved a well-earned break on holiday soon. But I was going to say, there was lots going on, wasn't there, in Auteuil, where Willie Mullins quite literally sent a boatload of horses over to tackle some of the biggest prizes there. Can you just give us a lowdown to anyone who may have missed it? What happened over the weekend in France?
What's really interesting here is you've high-class racing, obviously, with huge prize money. The Irish 2,000 and 1,000 guineas were worth €500,000 each. You had the Grand Steeplechase de Paris on Sunday worth 820,000. Like it's incredible. We normally think of jump racing as being the poor relation of the flat, but yet the prize money in France is enormous. What's really surprising is why is it only Willie Mullins who sent horses over, with some very small exceptions. With a horse called Screaming Colours was also over there in that Grand Steeplechase de Paris, and Richard Hobson ran Lord de Menil. But outside of that, where were Nichols? Where were Henderson? Where's Henry de Bromhead and Gordon Elliott? Gordon Elliott sent horses to America regularly. I'm really surprised that none of them caught the fact that there was such big prize money here, particularly Gordon Elliott as well, because what's interesting about this Grand Steeplechase de Paris, it's over 3 miles 6. It's a grade 1 class race over 3 miles 6, but they jump all sorts of obstacles in it. There's logs, there's hurdles, there's bullfinches, there's water jumps. You would think that would suit a lot of the horses that Gordon Elliott has, who seems to train them all over the banks. You only look at the cross-country race in Cheltenham with Delta Work and Tiger Roll. And Tiger Roll and that. You know, like, why wasn't Tiger Roll running this for the last 3 or 4 years? Delta Work certainly should have been kept for this. 820,000, it seems crazy that you don't run your best in a race like that, or don't run anything. But so many things to take out of this. Another thing about the French racing as well was the weights for these races. The champion hurdle was run on the Saturday over 3 miles, 1 furlong and 77 yards, which is a bit unusual for a champion hurdle. But we had the likes of Classical Dream in it, Kenboy, Tornado Flyer. They carried 10 stone 10, and there were 5-year-olds in it. It was won by a French 5-year-old called Hermes Bay. That carried 10 stone 5, so the top weight in it was 10 stone 10 in a grade 1, which is interesting considering in Cheltenham and everywhere else we're talking 12 stone or 11 stone 10 as the top weights in those. And the same then in this Grand Steeplechase de Paris, the top weights again were 10 stone 10, and it was again won by a 5-year-old. Most of the French horses that ran in the champion hurdle and in the Grand Steeplechase de Paris were 5-year-olds, which is astonishing when you think of the Irish and English aspect to it. A 5-year-old is only a baby in National Hunt terms, yet they're running them at the top level at 5. We know that a lot of these horses, they run over hurdles at 2 and 3 and everything in France. So it's an interesting, different way of looking at how they deal with their horses and the way they bring along their National Hunt horses. But again, it was a 5-year-old that won that Grand Steeplechase de Paris. He was the favourite, called Selgen and Hacked Up. An interesting thing in it was the ride that Danny Mullins gave one of Willie Mullins. Willie Mullins ran Alboom, Photo, Burrow Saint and Franco de Port. And Danny Mullins rode Franco de Port. He gave it an unbelievable ride. Now, he picks up place money. I think he got 80 grand or something for finishing third. What a run that was. Out the back, on the inside rail, put the horse to sleep, and only got into contention coming to the second last. He actually made a mistake. He was still sitting in 7th place at the second last when he ploughed through it. But Danny looked so much stronger than the French jockeys in the finish to get up for third. Great run, terrific weekends racing in France, and a lot to take out of it. I really liked it, I have to say. What's interesting about that Auteuil track as well, as far as I know, it was purpose built for jump racing. So what they did was it's got a concrete base to it, and then about 10 foot of all sorts of different substances on top, whatever, it's artificial stuff and everything, and then the grass on the top. But they can keep that ground. It was heavy officially over there. It looked pretty decent, soft ground from an Irish point of view or a UK point of view. But it's great to see that they can do that with it. They can keep the track as they want it all the way around, which be something that if we could only have done the same with the likes of Leopardstown for that Dublin Racing Festival and a lot of the other tracks where there's problems with the National Hunt racing, even Cheltenham itself, you'd wonder, should they relay them all in the same way Auteuil did?
Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting one. I wouldn't be qualified to touch upon that, but no, it's an interesting point you raised in regards to the topography, I suppose, of the actual track. But just very quickly, go back to that hurdle, Vincent, just to wrap up. Classical Dream, a horse I cannot work out. It seems to be no obvious rhyme or reason to his form. He looks majestic. He looks off. He looks somewhere in between. And also, what's happened to Tornado Flyer? This is a King George winner who just seems like the light bulb's gone out, doesn't he? I mean, they put him back over hurdles, and I myself, I said I actually had a few quid on him in the week, and I thought, because he's jumping on the pieces, thought, well, he might really enjoy this, but spark seems to have gone out there, and then just very quickly, to sum up the Willie Mullins horses as a whole, it was a little bit underwhelming, wasn't it? I mean, Alboom Photo failed to fire. Do you think it's some of these horses have had their day, or do you think we need to put it in perspective? We are nearly in June now. They have been on the go a long time.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, but it's very unusual for Willie Mullins not to have them primed for these big days. That's his secret all the time. You only look at what he did and punches down what he does in Cheltenham every year and everywhere else. We've got a Galway festival coming up for a week now at the end of July, and he'll have jumpers there and flat horses, and he'll have jumpers on the flat, he'll have flat horses over jumps, he does everything, and they'll all win, and it's amazing. And this was a surprise, and I haven't said that. He picks up second place with Classical Dream, picks up 70 grand in that. I think Franco de Port picked up something similar, a little bit more, for finishing third in the Grand Steeplechase de Paris. So comes home with 150 grand in prize money. It's not a bad weekend, whatever way you look at it. I'm sure the boats haven't gone that expensive in recent times, though everything else is going up. Classical Dream was very unusual there. I'm not like, the jury's out with me on this horse as well. I don't think he's a 3 miler. That's me personally. I think he'd be much better over 2.5, but they've extended him out to that as he's got older. And obviously he's won some very big races, including the Leopardstown race at Christmas was a hell of a performance as well when he beat Florian Porter. That day he went off in front like a scalded cat. He's done that on quite a few occasions. He can be very free in his races. This time settled him out the back, which was unusual. So maybe going forward, if he's still around for next season, which he possibly will be, maybe a different tactic on him. He might get the 3 miles a lot better. In Cheltenham, if you go back to the Stayers Hurdle in Cheltenham, he was travelling seriously well, turning into the straight all the way up, and just didn't come up the hill in the end. So maybe that different tactic there. Tornado Flyer, I don't know what to make of that horse. The King George, we know that race fell apart. Probably wasn't the greatest Grade 1 we've ever seen, but Tornado Flyer won it well. You would think stepping him up and trip for Gold Cups and that sort of stuff obviously didn't suit, but you would have thought he'd have performed a little bit better. But Ken Boy was in this as well and ran no race either. In the other race, the Grand Steeplechase de Paris, as you say, Burrow Saint was beaten a million miles out. Alboom Photo the same. Two of them were gone from probably 6 or 7 fences from home, which is really unusual for Mullins horses. But at the same time, look, it is that time of the season, isn't it? The season is actually over, so let's see what he does when he gets to Galway. Will be his next big target, I'd say, for most of his horses.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, picked up some good prize money, did Team Mullins, but nonetheless, a few of those, how should I say, stable stars under a little bit of a cloud on the back of those performances. Right, that pretty much wraps up the Monday Review Show. We've covered quite a lot there. My thanks always to Vincent Finnegan and to Stephen Harris for their input. Don't forget to check out irishracing.com for all the latest news and features and reviews, it has to be said. And all of Stephen's tips can be found on bettingexpert.com. If you do like to have a bet, please do gamble responsibly. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you to the end of the week. We're getting stuck into the weekend action. Bye for now.